Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. If you've ever found yourself just staring at the text, feeling totally intimidated, or honestly, maybe you're just going through the motions because you feel like you have to, we are going to completely change how you look at scriptural study today. We're going to talk about moving you from feeling disconnected to being deeply, passionately engaged with the text. And to do this, we'll be pulling from some incredibly profound personal experiences shared in Faith Womack's book, No More Boring Bible Study, along with some highly practical, actually handwritten teaching notes from Bible teacher Alan Parr.
Right off the bat, I want you to know you are absolutely not alone here. I mean, look, we've all had those long, exhausting days where you finally sit down and you realize you'd way rather turn your brain off with some mindless reality TV than try to unpack Lamentations or 2 Chronicles. It happens, and we usually harbor a ton of secret guilt about it. But as you see in our sources today, the stakes for staying disconnected from the text are massive. It's not just about letting a heavy book gather dust on a shelf. It's about actually understanding its message and its real, tangible power in your everyday life.
Now, this is where it gets heavy. This incredibly powerful realization comes straight from Faith Womack. See, when she was a teenager, she watched her father completely weaponize the Bible during a really painful, drawn-out divorce. He literally used the text to justify walking away from his responsibilities, to manipulate his family, and to feed her this highly dangerous, toxic cocktail of out-of-context scriptures.
Which brings us to Section 1, the danger of misreading why context matters.
Here's the crucial thing we have to understand. Ignoring proper Bible study doesn't just lead to a little boredom on a Sunday morning. It leaves you incredibly vulnerable to spiritual abuse. Because if you don't know how to read the text yourself, you have to rely entirely on what someone else claims it says. In her book, Faith details some truly shocking examples of this. Her father took verses entirely out of context to fit his own twisted narrative. For example, he actually cited Proverbs 11:4, which says wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, as his justification for abruptly stopping his mortgage payments, abusing the foreclosure system for years. And it gets worse. When Faith eventually went no contact to protect herself, he mailed her a letter citing Exodus 20:12, the command to honor your father and mother so you may live long, to explicitly claim that she was now cursed to die young. He literally turned a biblical blessing into a curse for his own personal gain.
Let's move into Section 2, the power of hermeneutics, your textual guardrail. So, driven by all of this heartbreaking confusion, Faith actually goes to Covenant College to study theology. She's desperate to know why God's will seemed so contradictory. And within her very first week on campus, the lights finally turned on. She discovered one foundational concept that changed absolutely everything: hermeneutics. Now, I know hermeneutics sounds like some stuffy, unapproachable academic term for high-level scholars, but it's not. It is a super practical, vital guardrail for all of us. It's the specific tool that stops us from misusing scripture and hurting people, or wrecking our own lives. It ensures we don't take a verse from Exodus and turn it into a weapon, which is exactly what Faith's dad did. It's what guides you when you're listening to a sermon or reading a book, helping you independently figure out if that teacher is actually being faithful to the original text. So, to give us a really practical framework for actually applying hermeneutics in our everyday lives, we are going to look at the incredibly detailed handwritten notes of Bible teacher Alan Parr. I love this because there is just something so authentic about learning from someone's actual handwritten study notes. Through these, he maps out the whole shebang, exactly what to do before you start, the specific tools you need to grab, and the step-by-step methods to extract actual, life-changing meaning from the text. All right, Section 3, the Bible Study Toolkit, Equipping Yourself. You wouldn't try to build a house without a hammer, right? Well, your very first tool is your translation. And what this brilliantly illustrates is that there is literally no perfect English translation out there. According to Parr's notes, you have to purposely choose your translation based on what you're trying to do. On one side, you've got word-for-word translations. Think NASB, NKJV, ESV. These give you the utmost accuracy to the original languages, but they read at about an 11th or 12th grade level. Then, on the flip side, you have thought-for-thought translations, like the NIV or NLT. You're getting a secondary level of technical accuracy, but they are written at a much more accessible 7th or 8th grade reading level.
Knowing what kind of tool you are holding is step one. Okay, so once you've got your translation sorted out, Alan Parr insists you need these 5 essential tools to shift from just surface level skimming to deep, transformative study. First up, a solid study Bible. This gives you immediate historical context right there at the bottom of the page. Second, a Bible dictionary to define cultural terms that we honestly just don't use anymore. Third is a lexicon, basically a translation dictionary, letting you look up the original Greek or Hebrew words to see what they meant back then, not how we use them today. Fourth, a commentary for expert theological insight. And finally, an atlas, because understanding the complex geography of the ancient world is huge. With these 5 items on your desk, you have absolutely everything you need to actively study. That takes us to Section 4, Methods for Deep Study, Topic and Character Focus. So, your toolkit is completely assembled. How do you actually start? Parr outlines a bunch of methods, but we're going to zero in on 2, researching a specific topic and doing a deep dive on a biblical character. Parr actually calls topical study the absolute best way to study the Bible because it instantly connects this ancient text to your modern life. By asking yourself these 4 targeted questions, you figure out exactly what you need to study today. Are you struggling to forgive someone? Are you dealing with jealousy at work? Do you want to finally understand end-time events? Identify the topic and then use a concordance to pull the right scriptures. You study them all together to get one unified, complete perspective on what God says about that specific struggle. On the other hand, if you want to understand how God works through messy, incredibly normal, flawed people, you can follow these 6 clear steps for a character study. You start by digging into their background. When and where did they live? What was their culture actually like? Then you compile all their verses, read them thoroughly, and summarize their life. But step 5 is where the real magic happens, stepping into their story. How did they face their giants? What massive life-altering mistakes did they make? And how did God respond to those failures? By doing this, you extract these timeless truths that you can directly apply to your own life today. And finally, Section 5, Mistakes You Must Avoid, Protecting Your Study. Here is the critical warning, though. Even with the absolute best tools, a great translation, and totally clear methods, you can still veer dangerously off track. From Parr's list of mistakes, these 5 really jump out. And if you look closely at this list, especially those final 2, trusting exclusively in someone else's interpretation and taking verses out of context to build a theology, you'll see exactly the kind of mistakes that allowed faithful Mac's father to cause so much absolute destruction. When we use the Bible as just a self-help manual to get what we want, or when we cherry-pick verses while completely ignoring the surrounding text, we aren't studying anymore, we're manipulating. But by utilizing the guardrails of hermeneutics and the practical frameworks we unpack today, you can safely and honestly, excitedly, move from being a Bible noob to a Bible nerd. You ensure the text remains a life-giving blessing rather than a destructive weapon. So I'm going to leave you with this. Are you going to let the Bible remain a dusty, intimidating book on your nightstand? Or are you ready to pick up your tools and discover the wonder of what it's actually saying to you today?